Hey, it's John and Mike, brew-dudes.com, and we're back in the old garage in the freezing cold, trying to keep it outside, kind of like back where we started. Back in the garage. I think we've said that before, but like this was the original Studio A.
Yeah.
When we started doing videos once a week back in 2013. Those good old days. Anyway, we're here today and we're drinking beer because that's what we do. And Mike's got a holiday themed, because we are coming up to that time of the year, end of the year, holidays are here.
Yeah.
And it's about brewing beer for those times, like I guess you can drink with your family or yourself.
That's right. Yeah.
Like we're not doing that big thing this time around, but certainly, you know, in regular old days, we'd be brewing up big holiday beers to share with others. So let's talk about this and let's dream about what could be. But what kind of holiday beer is this? This is a special one.
So when I think holiday beers, there's two types of beers that make holiday beers. There's big beers, like really big beers. Then there's weird beers. Beers that you put weird stuff in and people go, oh, this is special, there's weird stuff in here. So this beer
is weird.
Fits category 2. This is a weird beer. This is a sweet potato infused beer. Okay, so I get the inspiration for this beer. I actually brewed this a long time ago, and rather than use like all those pumpkin beers that are out there, right? I'm not a big squash family type of person. I don't care for that vegetable. But sweet potatoes I really like, and I thought, hey, this is a starchy adjunct. It's got a pretty interesting flavor, and it also has an interesting color to it. I wonder how that would infuse beer. So I've experimented with this a few times over the years, but this year I did a little bit different, and we'll see what you think in a minute. But let's talk about the base beer itself. Is sort of like not necessarily Oktoberfest, but it's a what you'd call now, the BJCP would call like a Festbier. So a little bit lighter than an Oktoberfest in color. This is 50-50 Pilsner malt and Vienna malt, right? So sort of going right, and then it's got a whole pound of Cara malt, 35 Love in it. Okay. Sometimes with this beer, I used to put some special B in there to try to get that raisiny, earthy thing going with the sweet potato, but I just wanted to see how much the sweet potato would play out this time. So the most important thing with this beer, for hopping, I'll just tell you right now so I don't forget later, this is just 1 ounce of nugget at 60 minutes.
That's it.
That's it. Okay, so the most important part for this beer, though, is how do you introduce sweet potato? So what I do is I'll go to the store and I'll get 5 or 6 of the biggest sweet potatoes I can get. I wrap them in foil and I put them in the oven at about 385 degrees for like 2 hours, 3 hours, until they get really soft and there's like even liquid coming out of the aluminum foil. Then I take and I let them cool a little bit so I can handle them, unwrap them, slice them, and I scoop out all the flesh into a container, and then mash the flesh up with like a potato masher so it's all nice and mashed up. And for this particular recipe, I think the total amount of mash that I had in the end was about 3 pounds. Then what I do on brew day, I get the mash water heating up in the mash tun, and what I've noticed works best is you want to get that sweet potato mash into the liquor of your mash tun before you add any grains. Otherwise you get like more clumps, and it's hard to really beat up all that sweet potato with the grain, the doughing in. So I'll get all that sweet potato mix in, rinse out the container really good, and stir it as I'm heating up to that final strike temperature. Make sure I get back to strike temperature. Then I always use rice hulls, but this time around I use a little bit more just in case you're going to get some sort of gumminess from the potatoes, which you usually don't because you've really roasted the snot out of them, really steamed them inside the foil. So the starches are totally accessible, and they've been displaced by the stirring in the water. Then all the grain goes in, and then I proceed as normal. I mash, and at the end I recirculate, and there's some B-roll video. You'll see like nice orange color recirculation. Then I boil as normal, like I said, 1 ounce of nugget, and make a beer out of it.
Nice.
And there you go. And so I think it's a unique way to just make a different beer that people go, oh, there's sweet potato in here. The other thing too is the grain bill for this recipe gives me a recipe of about 1048, 1049 for starting gravity, but with the 3 pounds of sweet potato, it actually comes in at about 1054, 1055. Okay. I mean, not huge, and I'm not trying to make a huge beer. Remember, this is category 2 weird beers, not category 1 huge beers. So, so anyway, it's but I wanted to present the sweet potato in a way that isn't weird and like, oh, this is bizarre, right?
No.
So, so what do you think about the beer? Well, I take a couple more
Well,
sips.
I was a lucky person the last time, I think the first time you brewed a sweet potato beer, and I can say that this version has a lot more body than that one did. I remember that being pretty thin.
Yeah.
Like it fermented out real dry.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, it's certainly like, oh, okay, well, there's something different about this, but it was almost like as if you put in a lot of simple sugar.
Yeah.
And it just kind of thins out.
And I think in the
body.
mash, that sweet potato, it completely goes to simple sugar.
Yeah.
So interestingly, I've brewed this in the past, I've used like USO5 to be like really plain and just let whatever the flavor come through. But this was actually a repitch of the Y Yeast 1098 beer yeast from the Karastan bitter.
Okay.
Right? So it was just another pitch of that, which has a lower attenuation, and that yeast itself contributes a little more body. So I think as far as holiday beer goes and stuff, it sort of gives you a little bit of...
That's the difference, and then that's the difference, because the last one, it seemed to be, it finished it fermented really dry. I think that's the big difference I'm taking. In terms of like...
Which I like, because I think it's more drinkable.
No,
right?
I agree, yeah. I agree. If it's too thin, then it becomes like, your brain is connecting, okay, there's a weird ingredient here, and it's also... It just doesn't jive with what I think an ale should
I like
be.
the body here, but I don't think it's like heavy or something. It's just more of a fuller experience.
A little chewier, yeah, that's about it. Yeah, it's not, exactly. It's not like a thick, you know, syrupy thing.
The final gravity on this was 1014.
Yeah, okay, okay. In terms of flavor, certainly color, I think you nail it. I mean, there's not like a lot of orange or it's like it's
not out of the park.
No, it just seems. I mean, that seems in it's the larger volume there. It's a little more orangey, and in the glass, it's a little more golden. But in terms of aroma, I mean, it's mostly malt for me.
Yep.
And then in the flavor, there's just a hint of, you know, a tuber.
Of something, of that interesting earthiness per se.
Yeah. I think that's it. It's not overly like vegetable. It's not overly like caramel. Like I was thinking, like you put the sweet potatoes in the oven for that long. Every time I cook them up, they get like really sugary. But
I mean they're wrapped, so they're steamy more than they are getting roasty or even some. I mean, I have done it in the past where I've like let them go for like 4 hours or more, and then you really get like this dehydrated, mushy stuff.
But it's super drinkable, and if you told me later that there was sweet potato in this beer, I would say okay, didn't detect anything. I mean, a little bit of just holiday goodness in there, but not that it doesn't taste like you put 3 pounds of sweet potatoes in this beer, dude. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, right. So that brings us to another point, right? One of the interesting things about beer with sweet potatoes, or for that matter, gourd squash in it, is really, you're not really actually tasting pumpkin in a pumpkin beer. You're tasting spice. Now, I don't really care for spiced beers, so I don't spice this inherently, but I just happen to have over here.
Oh, you do, huh? Right here in the garage?
Right here in the garage. A little spice tincture I made.
Okay.
So you can pour yourself a little more beer and take maybe a good squeeze of that in with your beer. And I don't know, I haven't tested how much we should titrate, but you add some beer and see what happens. I'll take a squeeze of this. So what this is a full teaspoon of cinnamon, half a teaspoon of nutmeg, half a teaspoon of allspice, and half a teaspoon of ground cloves, all ground spices, with about 200 mLs of vodka that I then let sit for about 4 or 5 hours. I hit it in the microwave real quick just to get the oils to start coming out. Then I strain it through a coffee filter.
I just mixed the perfect amount. Cheers. But yeah, I mean, it changes the aroma totally. The amount I put in was just enough to like sense some spice and stuff. And then it lingers in the aftertaste. And
so now suddenly you're going, wow, sweet potato beer. Right?
I guess.
I mean, because I think people expect in beers like this a spicing. But if you don't want to spice a whole 5-gallon batch, a little tincture like this, a mix of spices and some vodka.
Yeah, nice.
It works good.
The cinnamon's coming in strong.
That's beautiful.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. All right.
So there you go, sweet potato beer. I think everybody should give it a try.
This is what we should be brewing for the holiday season of 2020. It's the new cool. It's better than cucumber stout. it's more in line with what's happening
Yes.
in this particular time and place in the space-time continuum, I guess. What else were you gonna say? Anything?
That's it.
That's it?
I think that this is a fun beer, and when you're home alone this holiday season, you can tell all your in-laws and your friends and family, hey, guess what I'm drinking? Sweet potato beer.
And they're
going to say, oh, I'm glad we're not coming over.
Okay, good for you. You can have all of that. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up. We really appreciate that. If you like this kind of content, you like just talking about beer, brewing beer, and spending the holidays home alone, subscribe to our channel. We don't talk about the home alone stuff all that much, but certainly about home brewing beer. That's kind of our wheelhouse. For John and Mike, brew-dudes.com, brew on.
Cheers.